All right, so our next section of notes in this chapter is solving radical equations, which are just equations that involve square roots, cube roots, fourth roots, and so on. Our steps in general, we're going to isolate the radical, so that's on one side of the equal sign, and then once we do that, you're going to raise each side to the power of the index to eliminate the radical sign, which I'll explain when we get to that step in an equation. Solve the remaining equation, and we're just going to ignore this step for now. I'm just more focused on solving the equations correctly for now. All right, so our first example, we have the square root of x plus 5 equals 12. All right, so the whole point is to get this square root of x by itself. So our first step, just like any other time we would solve an equation, would be subtract 5 from both sides. So we have the square root of x equals 7. And now this, which we've kind of talked about in the past, is if you have the square root and we need to get rid of it, we're going to square both sides so that it becomes x equals 49. All right. So the answer is x equals 49. All right, so for number 2, we have 3 minus the fourth root of x equals 0. So we're going to solve for the fourth root of x. We're going to subtract 3. So we have negative fourth root of x equals negative 3. And now we have to get rid of this negative here. So that's essentially dividing by negative 1. We'll get rid of that. So we have the fourth root of x equals 3. And now since this is the fourth root of x, to get rid of the fourth root, we're going to raise everything to the fourth power, because the fourth power will cancel the fourth root and the fourth power, so we're left with just x. So then 3 to the fourth power is 81. So our answer is 81. So moving on to number 3. So we have 10 plus the square root of x plus 7 equals 11. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract the 10. So that we have the square root of x plus 7 equals 1. And now to get rid of the square root, we're going to square both sides so that it looks like this. And remember, squaring a square root, they cancel each other out. So on the left side, we're left with x plus 7 equals, and then 1 squared is 1. And then at this step, we should all know we just subtract 7 and we get x equals negative 6. And that is our final answer. All right, so for number 4, we're trying to get the square root of 6x minus 5 by itself. So our first step, subtract 10. So we have the square root of 6x minus 5 equals negative 7. And then since it's square root, we have to square both sides. So we have 6x minus 5 squared equals negative 7 squared. So the square root and the squared cancel each other, and we have 6x minus 5 equals, and the negative 7 squared is 49. And now we just have a two-step equation to solve. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. So we have 6x equals 54. And we divide by 6. So x equals 9. And voila. We have solved that equation. Our next example, we have negative 36 equals negative 9 times the quantity x minus 12 to the 1/2 power. All right, so we need to get this set of parentheses to the 1/2 power by itself. So we need to get rid of that negative 9 by dividing both sides by negative 9. So negative 36 divided by negative 9 is 4. So over here, we're left with x minus 12 to the 1/2 power. Now, the 1/2 power, remember, is the same as the square root. So we're going to do the same process we would if we were trying to get rid of a square root sign, which is square both sides. So we're doing 4 squared equals x minus 12 to the 1/2 squared. Because what happens is the 1/2 and the 2 cancel. So we have 16 equals x minus 12. And then we just add 12 to both sides. So x equals 28. And that is the final answer for number 5. On to number 6. So now this time we have the quantity of 7x minus 1 to the 1/3 power plus 11 equals 7. All right, so just start with our first step of subtracting 11 and getting that set of parentheses by itself. So we have 7x minus 1 to the 1/3 power equals -4. And now we have 1/3. So instead of raising each side to the second power, we have to multiply them or raise them to the 1/3 power, or to the third power, to cancel the 1/3. So we are cubing both sides of this equation. Now over here, the 1/3 power and the cubed power cancel, and we're left with 7x minus 1 equals, and then -4 cubed is -64. And now we'll just solve this equation. So we have 7x equals -63. So then x equals -9. I'm not going to write those 2 steps in there. At this point, if you are finishing Algebra 2, I should not have to write those 2 steps in. Mostly because I taught you how to do those 2 steps, and you should all know how to do it. All right, on to number 7. So we have the 4th root of 8x plus 12 minus 9 equals -11. So we're getting the 4th root by itself. So we're going to start with adding 9 to both sides. So we have the 4th root of 8x plus 12 equals -2. And now to get rid of a 4th root, we have to raise everything to the 4th power. So this is our next line. And now the 4th root and the 4th power cancel, and we're left with 8x plus 12. Oops. And then -2 to the 4th power is 16. And now we're going to solve this equation. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. So we have 8x equals 4. Divide by 8, which means x equals 1/2. And that is our final answer. All right, so for number 8, we have a couple of steps here before we can do anything with the square root, because we have 4 times the square root of 43 minus 3x plus 18 equals -2. So our first step here, we just need to move this 18. So we have to subtract 18 from both sides. So we have 4 times the square root of 43 minus 3x now equals -20. And now I have to get rid of this times 4, so we're going to divide both sides by 4. So we have 43 minus 3x, the square root of 43 minus 3x equals -5. And now since it's square root, we're going to square both sides. So we have square root of 43 minus 3x squared equals -5 squared. And then the square root and the squared cancel, and we have 43 minus 3x equals 25. And now we're going to subtract 43. So we have -3x equals -18. And then divide by -3, and we get x equals 6. And there we go. All right, now moving on to our next question. Now, for this one, we have square roots on both sides of the equal sign. So we have the square root of x minus 8 equals the square root of 43 minus 2x. We're going to square both sides because squaring both sides gets rid of the square root signs on either side of the equal sign. So if we square both sides, both sets of square roots and squared cancel, so we're left with x minus 8 equals 43 minus 2x. And now we have a simple two-step equation to solve, and I'm going to just do all of this in one step, make it easier. So we have 3x equals 51, and divide by 3, x was 17. And voila. All right, so we have the square root of 8x equals x. Now, we have to get rid of the square root, so we're going to square both sides. So remember, over here, the square root and the squared cancel. So we have 8x equals x squared. Now, to solve this one, we need to get everything on the same side of the equal sign. So you're going to subtract the 8x over. And for about the millionth time this year, you cannot subtract x squared and x because they do not have the same exponent. So we have x squared equals negative 8x, oops, not equals, minus negative 8x. And now we have to factor this to solve for x. So the only way to factor this is to take out a common factor, which is x. So it becomes 0 equals x times the quantity x minus 8. And then once we do that, we set them equal to each other. So x equals 0, x minus 8 equals 0. So x equals 0 and 8. So factoring is back. And remember, it's never really gone away. Those are our final two answers for that one. All right. 11, we have the square root of 12 minus x plus 7x equals 8x. So we're going to subtract the 7x. So we're left with the square root of 12 minus x equals x. And now to get rid of our square root, we're going to square both sides. So we have 12 minus x squared equals x squared. So on the left side of this, we're left with 12 minus x equals x squared. Once again, we want to get everything on the same side of the equal sign. So we're going to subtract the 12 and add the x. So we have, I'm going to just move it up here. We have 0 equals x squared plus x, oops, got a little ahead of myself, plus x minus 12. And now we have to factor this. So we need the factors of 12 that are going to get us 1, which are 4 and 3. Right, and then since we need to get positive 1, the 4 has to be positive and the 3 is the negative. And then just set them both equal to 0. So x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. So x equals negative 4 and 3. As our final answer for number 11. And number 12, we have the square root of 6x minus 38 equals x minus 5. All right, now this is the one where everybody is going to do the wrong step at some point. We have to square both sides because the square root of 6x minus 38 is by itself. So we have the square root of 6x minus 38 squared equals, and then we have to square the entire right side of this equation. All right, so over here we know that the square root and the squared are going to cancel. That's basically been the whole point of this lesson up until this point. So we're left with 6x minus 38. Now, we have to talk about what this means because we forget every time we use it. X minus 5 squared does not mean you square each individual term. It means you are multiplying two of those together. So we have x minus 5 times x minus 5. And now we have to do the distributive property twice. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. And negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So we have 6x minus 38 equals x squared minus 5x plus 25. Now, we need to combine like terms over here, and so that we can get everything on the same side of the equal sign. So we have 6x minus 38 equals x squared minus 10x plus 25. And then we're going to move everything over. So we're going to subtract the 6x, add the 38. I'm just doing this all in one step. Ouch! Sorry, Noelle, just bit my foot. Minus 6x plus 38. So we have 0 equals x squared minus 16x plus, if I can find my calculator, 63, I believe. Yep, 63. Now we need to factor this. So we need the factors of 63. That'll get us 16, which are 9 and 7. So we have 0 equals x minus 9 and x minus 7. And then set both of those equal to 0, so that we have x minus 9 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0. So x equals 7 and 9. And that is our final answer for this problem and the final example in the set of notes. So have a good day.